Greetings. I am live. At least that is what YouTube says. It's Gordy Canuck, and you are watching Act One. And Act One stands for a Canadian take on news events. Not going to be fixating too much on the news tonight. I'm kind of doing a bit of a rinse and repeat on yesterday's video, on yesterday's live stream, where I shared the bombshell news being the admission by the Food and Drug Administration in the United States of America, the FDA. And the FDA circulated an internal memo. And I covered this with that was the topic of last night's video, the fact that they've circulated an internal memo which says that for the first time, the US FDA will acknowledge that the COVID-19 vaccine uh, that the COVID-19 vaccines have killed American children. And it got my wheels turning for much of the day today. I was thinking about that bombshell and over the manner in which the COVID vaccines were promoted to the population. And it got me thinking about what are typically referred to in marketing in the advertising industry. They have what are called branding statements. And many of you will recognize branding statements. Um, one, if I say just do it, many will default know automatically without even having to think about it. When you hear the words just do it, oh, Nike or Nike. Some say Nike, some say Nike. Uh, I say both. I flip back and forth between the two. Like Porsche and Porsche. Which one is it? I don't know. If I say good to the last drop, especially if you're older, you'll think of Maxwell House, good to the last drop. These are branding statements that in marketing and advertising, what they are seeking to do is to embed a short little statement, ideally three or four words. Just do it, 3 words. And it's an incredibly effective tool to have to define your product in the marketplace. Burger King years ago had one, and it was "Have it your way." Have it your way. 4 words. Have it your way. And I don't think that one worked quite as well as just do it or good to the last drop because so a lot of times have it when people say have it your way, it's more of it's said in a confrontational tone. Oh, fine, have it your way. At any rate, Danny Holtman has shown up. Uh, and he's added in a McDonald's one. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. That was theirs. If anyone else, Danny and Whale have both shown up on the live stream. And it's interesting. I'm looking at the results from last night's live stream, and I can't tell exactly how many times it's been viewed. If I go to the main page on my dashboard, which is in the YouTube studio to show me how much a video has been watched, it says 8 or 9, not even 10 views. But then if I go onto another page, it says it's been viewed 60, 70 times. And I've spoken a fair bit recently about throttling, about suppression of content, about how the YouTubes of the world, how the major tech companies are embedded with organizations like the World Economic Forum, and about how there is a definitive effort going on to control the minds. They talk about hearts and minds. There's a definite effort out there, in my opinion, to shape the thoughts, views, and opinions and tell people how to feel about things, and through the media, both through the mainstream legacy media, both through mainline players, as well as by either taking content such as my own, pathetic and miserable as it may be, a no a zero production value little YouTube channel, but still with the potential to influence, shape opinion. And so if you say the right things, your content gets amplified. If you go counter narrative, things get suppressed. And so I'm on a bit of a rant lately. I'm saying the same things a lot of time with respect to my own channel, that if you do enjoy the content, if you like what I have to say, if you think that I do have something to contribute to the public discourse, to the marketplace of ideas, then I encourage you to subscribe to the channel. I bumped up a few since that video went up last night. I think I'm up three. I'm hardly Joe Rogan. I'm hardly PBD. I'm not the Young Turks or anyone. I don't have a major footprint in the digital sphere in the YouTube world. But like anyone, I would like to grow the channel as much as as much as I can, as much as I'm able. I would like to grow it, but I'm not going to sell out, and I'm not going to be a mouthpiece for the prevailing narrative because it earns me views and clicks and all the other stuff. I'm going to say what I really believe. Uh, I'm just reading Danny's writing that YouTube hates the truth. Eh, there's a narrative. And sometimes maybe the narrative is true. Maybe sometimes the narrative is true. Maybe sometimes it's only half a lie. And sometimes it is likely an outright lie. But you definitely need to promote the narrative if you're going to play the YouTube game. You should engage with AI, which is something that I do not do. None of the content that I generate, none that I have generated, none that I am generating, none that I will generate, engages with AI. I'm not interested in artificial intelligence in any way, shape, or form. Um, if you want to, AI is like, if you want your brain to become weak, then use AI. That is my opinion. The brain is a muscle, and if all you're interested in is results, well, then maybe AI is the way to go. And Whale's saying that on when you go on to the yesterday's podcast and you just watch it, and he's calling it, I like that, he calls it a podcast, PAW, because I have a new co-host, November 18th. We have a new member of the family, Max the Wonder Dog, who you are not going to be seeing tonight. Max is crashed out on the bed, and he's wiped out because my 12-year-old had Mac. They were in the backyard a good chunk of the afternoon, and they were running around. Max was in full zoomy mode. That's what my big guy calls it. Max has the zoomies where he's just tearing around, and he did a great job in wearing the Wonder Dog out. So, and on top of that, until Max gets bigger, he's not as my old co-host, dearly departed Candy the Wonder Dog. She would climb up on me, and border collie, good sized dog. Max is getting big, and it's hard for me. It's getting harder and harder for me to move him around and pick him up and lift him. He's going to be bigger than Candy was. He's going to be a big dog. He's a boxer, border collie, Springer Spaniel, and maybe some lab, maybe some other things. He's a purebred mongrel hound. Anyway, Danny's writing, we must all read Propaganda by Edward Bernays. Propaganda is ubiquitous in today's world. There's a fancy word. I like fancy words. Ubiquitous. If you hear that word, it means ubiquitous, just means it's everywhere. Uh, and you get to sound so much more erudite, another big word. Uh, you get to sound so smart by saying, rather than just saying it's everywhere, say it's ubiquitous. Anyway, uh, and Danny's writing that I don't need to feel so bad. Danny has two users on his YouTube channel. I've got 1,300 plus. I'd like to get up to a few thousand, and maybe over time I will. We'll see. But I'm not going to sell myself out. And then Danny is using a politically incorrect word, a word we're not to use anymore, certainly not in this context. But I'm going to say it anyway because Danny wrote it and I agree with it. AI will render you retarded. There's a pejorative word. I could tell a story about that, but I won't right now. Author Sidney J. Harris offered a nuanced perspective. This is whale oil beef. Author Sidney J. Harris offered a nuanced perspective before AI. And there's a quote here. The real danger is not that computers will begin to think like men, but that men will begin to think like computers. Um, at any rate, I've put up something of a pejorative, clickbaity thumbnail to this video. I just go on to a meme generator with images that are in the public domain where I can add whatever text I want. I don't use AI. At least I don't think I'm using AI. I hope I'm not. And I found that in lovely thumbnail of everyone's favorite supposed philanthropist, Mr. Gates, holding a syringe. And I forget exactly how I worded it, but something to the effect of, hey, chances are it won't kill you. How about that for a branding statement for the COVID jabs? Hey, chances are you won't die. Compare that with the branding statement that they used. The branding statement that was used on the COVID jabs, on the COVID vaccines, was safe and effective. It was everywhere you turned, and it's still everywhere you turn. Safe and effective, incredibly safe and effective. All the research shows the COVID vaccines are incredibly, amazingly, stupendously safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. And this is done, I will submit that this is done for a reason. They want the great unwashed, Joe Sixpack and Sally Housecoat. They want everyone thinking that whenever they hear talk of the COVID vaccine, they want immediately the word safe and effective to spring into their minds. Just the same way Nike wants you to think, hey, just do it when you hear about their product, their shoes, their footwear. And safe and effective. But the thing is, here's the thing. We now have the FDA saying that they are acknowledging that the COVID vaccines have killed people, but the safe and effective messaging has become so firmly embedded into the subconscious mind and even the conscious mind of the populace that when I bring this up to people, they say, well, yeah, but it's incredibly rare. They're very safe and effective. I've even heard people say they're still safe and effective. And so the marketing has worked. The marketing has worked. No question about it. Way to go, vaccine industry. And it certainly helps when you have a very compliant political apparatus, governments, and media mouthpieces, and they're all saying the same line. It's a very effective way to control the population. Let's see what more is being said. Whale Oil's writing, I rarely listen to the radio, but while driving, I did. Nice music. Ad told me to be safe and receive be safe. Get the shot. Be safe. Because if you don't, it's not safe. And now I have to be careful. I have to tread carefully. I have had videos taken down from my channel. I have been accused, at least, YouTube has told me that I have been a purveyor of medical misinformation, and that is not my goal. I fully acknowledge I do not have a medical degree. I do not have a background in the sciences per se. Am I completely ignorant about what science is and how it works? No, I did take science courses at the University of level. I went to York, so I have some Knowledge of the scientific field. I know how the scientific method works. I know about the protocols for a double-blind, placebo-controlled coughing fit. I know the protocols for a double-blind, placebo-controlled clinical trial. I understand how these things work. I even believe I understand the rationale behind them. But I also know that within science, bias exists everywhere. As a matter of fact, that's why the scientific method and things like double-blinded, placebo-controlled trials, they try to do their best to mitigate against investigator bias. If I am a major pharmaceutical drug company and I put forward a if I'm going to be testing a particular product and I with an aim toward marketing it toward a certain population, well, then I have a bias. I want that drug to be approved. I've invested probably tens, maybe hundreds, millions of dollars into the research, into the development, into the actual trial itself. So I have a bias. This is why they have what are referred to as double blinded protocols. Double blinded simply means that the clinical investigators, the guys in the lab coats administering the pharmaceutical agent product, they do not know whether they are handing out or administering a placebo or the actual agent. They don't know. And the individuals engaged in the trial as clinical participants, call them patients if you like, they don't know whether they're getting a placebo or the actual drug. They don't know either. And the way this is done is basically through lot numbers. So the individual is given an agent, a chemical, a drug, whatever the case may be, and it has a lot number associated with it. But the person handing it out or administering it and the person receiving it, they don't know whether it's drug or placebo. But that lot number in behind a curtain, a proverbial curtain, is a group of people typically referred to as something like a data safety monitoring board, DSMB. They're behind the curtain, behind the scenes, and they know. But the members of the DSMB, the data safety monitoring board, are to have absolutely no contact whatsoever with the clinical investigators because they might tip them off because the protocol recognizes that the investigators that they have a bias. Bias exists in science, it exists in all facets of human life. And I've kind of tonight's video is kind of off the fly. It's a stream of consciousness. I normally don't script anything out for my live streams. But anyway, and when I kind of hit a roadblock in things to talk about, what's great is having the live chat and being able to springboard off whatever Danny, whatever Whale, anyone at Nancy is now here. If anyone else is on the live stream, you're welcome to fill up the live chat. I really appreciate it. Join our little truth seeking community here at Act One, a Canadian take on news events. And if you hit the subscribe button, then you should I emphasize the word should, you're supposed to be notified when content gets uploaded, which I do from time to time. I'll pre-record a video, upload it, or to be notified when the live stream, when the channel is actually live. And so anyway, Danny's writing that whatever the government says, do the exact opposite. Well, that's great as a general rule, but if the government says pay your taxes and you don't, could be trouble. If the government says drive at 60 kilometers an hour, you have to be somewhat discerning. I just throw that in there. I know Danny knows that, but whatever. And then he goes on to say, bah, bah, there are a lot of sheep in the world. A lot of people don't want to investigate. They don't want to read. They don't want to do any thinking on their own. They simply want an authoritative voice to hand them the answer. Should I get the COVID vaccine? Well, the government says to do it, and I don't want to read into anything, and I don't want to listen to contrary points of view. I don't want to listen to differing opinions on it. So I'm just going to go along. And besides that, everyone is saying safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective. So it has to be safe and effective. And the thing is, we do know, I think it's pretty much universally acknowledged. I'm not, that there have been individuals who have died after getting vaccinated, and I do believe that there have been instances where, through autopsies, they've determined that the vaccine was actually the cause of death. But what we are told is that, but it is incredibly rare. It is incredibly rare. Guy at work the other day, a gentleman I go to church with, said, "Well, yeah, well, it's 1 in 10,000." And my question is it? Is it 1 in 10,000? How do we know this? RFK Jr., who's the head of HHS, Health and Human Services, kind of, something of the top health political dog in the United States of America. He has been taken to task in the mainstream legacy media because it's what I've read is that RFK has said that Hank Aaron, the former home run king, celebrated Hall of Fame baseball player with I believe he spent most of his career with the Atlanta Braves, and who surpassed Babe Ruth for the most home runs in a baseball career. Anyway, Hank Aaron died something like 12 days after his COVID jab. And RFK, being alleged in news articles that I'm reading, is that RFK has said that Hank Aaron died due because of the COVID vaccine. And the media has said, well, that's been debunked. Hank Aaron was declared to have died of natural causes. And so RFK Jr. is falsely linking the death of Hank Aaron to the COVID vaccines. But I went and did some investigation. I did some reading. I wanted to know, how did they determine what were the results of the autopsy that was done on Hank Aaron? Because to my a non-expert way of thinking, if you want to know how the cause of death, if you want a definitive reason, you need to do an autopsy. But surprise, surprise, when after Hank Aaron died, the coroner or the health authority, whoever, the medical examiner, whoever it was, just wrote down cause of death, natural causes, no autopsy was performed. So I'm asking it as an open question. Can we definitively say with certainty that Hank Aaron died of natural causes when no autopsy was done? What were these natural causes? Was it just the heart just suddenly stopped beating? Was there a blood clot? We don't know. They didn't do an autopsy. He died in his sleep. Uh, and I wonder how many people have died of, I do think because just about everyone I know, the vast majority of the people I know, have all had the COVID vaccines. Most of the people I work with have had the COVID vaccines. They're living. They're not dead. Everyone I served with, in the army, until I left in June of 2021. They, if they remained in, I don't know of anyone who remained in who didn't get the COVID jab. And so, I don't keep close tabs on everyone I served with. And so tons of them are still alive. Not everyone. I do know two individuals who died. There was a guy I served with, same unit as myself, in his 40s, a master corporal, died of a heart attack. Was it related to the COVID vaccine? Was it not? I don't know. but I do know this 40-ish, mid 40s, probably about 45 years of age. He passed away. I do know of another young serving member who was in around 30 who was found dead. I never heard a definitive, what caused his death, how it occurred. I never got any details on it. With Kevin, I heard it was a heart attack. Uh, I know other people. I have two family members, two elderly family members who, after COVID vaccination, that had both had massive strokes and subsequently died. Now, I went to church with a woman who had a massive aneurysm, and eventually, after that adverse event, she passed on as well. Now, can I definitively state that these health events, these adverse events, that they were a result of the vaccine? No, I can't. I know tons more. I have a member of my extended family at 38 years of age who had a heart attack, 6 foot tall, 38 years of age, only 180 pounds, extremely, to my non-expert view, extremely fit and healthy, 6 foot tall, 180 pounds. He's a little bit taller than me and lighter. Uh, has a treadmill and an elliptical machine in his basement because he keeps fit during the winter time. During the summertime, he goes for walks. During the winter, where getting out for a walk is a little more problematic. He's on the elliptical or the treadmill. Uh, I know of I won't say the names, but a local counselor in town who volunteered at the vaccine clinics when they would come into town, had a massive heart attack. And uh, too many more to mention. I'm just kind of giving a quick little off the top of my head snapshot of the number of people in the last 3, 4 years who I've known who have had either passed away or had, negative health events. Now, can I definitively say that they were all caused by, or that any of them were definitively caused by the COVID vaccine? No, I can't. But we're also told that on rare occasions, negative things do happen. And so when they're branding, selling, trying to convince people to take the COVID vaccines, putting safe and effective on it makes sense. But is that, wouldn't it be, I think it would be more accurate to say, well, chances are you won't die. Chances are it won't kill you. And now, why wouldn't they pick that branding statement? Chances are it won't kill you. Because it would be very honest. It would be a truthful branding statement. Hey, chances are it won't kill you. And that's true. I mean, even based on my own personal experience of everyone I know, who's gotten it, the vast majority of them are still alive. So chances are it won't kill you. Death is rare, happens. And anyway, what do you guys think? I'm just gonna read on. Um, Wales writing, wondering if you hold up pre-written placards in science with true thoughts written out, would UTAI interpret it? I don't know. I don't fully understand what you mean. If you hold up pre-written placards in silence, would AI interpret it? Okay. I know the type of videos you've seen where someone stand there and they just have things written out on little sheets of paper or placards, poster board, whatever. And I would imagine my guess, Whale, is that, yeah, they probably could. They probably, I mean, there's the talk of this hockey stick curve learning curve, this, hockey stick shaped learning curve that AI is on, and has AI advanced to the point where it can interpret written down speech. And that doesn't seem to me to be too far a leap for AI, but it's a thought. Danny's writing that with YouTube, if you say eating oranges will boost your immunity, that's medical. Oh, great. Get me into trouble. I am not saying, I'm just reading. Um, I know that vitamin C, which is in Vitamin C is in oranges, and from everything I know, non-expert, vitamin C is good for you. Vitamin D, vitamin E, vitamin E, I think is sunlight. But anyway, uh, you got to be careful. I should read these before I read them. Uh, uh, I've got to just trying to catch up. A lot of messages have been written, and okay, I'm caught up. Nancy is writing, "Hello, everyone. Gordon, now everything is done by AI on CommieTube. Humans are not even reviewing the content anymore. In one fashion, it might make it easier to, you go unnoticed. Who knows?" Danny's asking a question, or what he's writing is just curious. What if vaccines are safe and effect are safe manufactured? Period. Why are manufactured? What? Yeah. Why do they have immunity? Why have they been indemnified? Indemnified, another fancy word that just means immune. They're indemnified, immune, protected from prosecution if their products cause harm. The COVID vaccines, the and this came out during parliamentary hearings in Canada. Parliamentarians wanted to read the contracts that our government signed with the Moderna's, Pfizer's, AstraZeneca's, the vaccine manufacturers, and they wanted to read the contracts, and they were only allowed to read the contracts if they first signed a non-disclosure agreement. Um, a non-disclosure agreement that would preclude any parliamentarian from then going public with what was contained within. So there's anything nefarious in the contracts, a parliamentarian would have to risk legal prosecution if they were to divulge it publicly after having signed a non-disclosure agreement. And there is a member, I'm trying to remember the title. His name was, I think, Anthony House Feather. I know that the last name was House Feather. He's a Montreal area MP, Liberal member of Parliament, and he was a parliamentary secretary under the Trudeau Liberals during the COVID vaccine when they were authorizing them and promoting them and firing people who wouldn't take them and engaging in all kinds of other what I consider to be disgusting behavior, coercing people and basically forcing them to take what in many cases was an unwanted medical intervention, because so many people say, I wouldn't have gotten it, but I had no choice. I was forced to get it because I needed it for my job. I work for the government. I needed to travel. My mother was dying. I needed to get on a plane, and they wouldn't let me get onto a plane unless I got the shot. So a lot of people were forced into taking it or were coerced into taking it. And Anthony Housefeather, he said that when he was talking about why the indemnification, why can't we sue the companies? Why do we have to sign a non-disclosure agreement? And Anthony Housefeather, in an open committee of our own Canadian government, said the reason for these strict protocols is because we, the government, were asking the vaccine manufacturers to rush through a product without doing the normal research. They didn't do it the way it would normally be done, because and his supposition was that because we asked them to do it, we asked them to rush through it, and so they were at enormous risk. I can look it up. I've done videos on this in the past. As a matter of fact, I think one of my videos uploaded has a link to the transcript from the committee hearing where Anthony Housefeather is admitting that the vaccine manufacturers did not do that they rushed things. They rushed through without doing the proper investigation that would normally take place. And yet we were forced, or so many people felt they had no choice. I could have said the same thing I was in the Army. I wasn't slated to retire. I could still be in the Army right now. I'd be coming up to retirement within a few months. I was signed to serve until I was age 60. Um, so I could have stayed in, but ultimately it was my decision. As soon as the vaccines were authorized in December of 2020, I knew then you don't have to be a genius level IQ to figure out that, oh, well, they're going to force it on me. Hepatitis, they force those, they're going to force this one. And so I submitted what is referred to in the Canadian Armed Forces as a voluntary release because if when they became mandated, which did happen in September or October of 2021, they all serving members in the Canadian Armed Forces, like so many other government agencies, you have to get it. And in the military, if you're ordered to do something and you refuse, that can be seen as refusing a lawful order. And just like I'm not a medical expert, I'm also not a legal expert, but my belief is that if you decline or refuse to obey a lawful order, I believe you could be subject, or I could have been subject to a court martial proceeding, and just as soon avoid that. And so in December 2020, before they had been, when they were still saying, hey, we're not going to force anybody, we're not going to force anyone. That's what Justin Trudeau was saying. No one's going to be forced. Well, I knew it was, knew that Trudeau, Carney, you know, they lie. I knew it was a lie. So I submitted my release, but it wasn't, I didn't have to say anything about the vaccines because they weren't mandated at that point. And I just said, my knees are going, I'm getting old. My wife has some health issues. 6 months later, you get out. Uh, and so let's read on what's being said. Um, Nancy's writing, it's gotten so bad on YouTube with AI surveillance that if you get a ban or lose your account, the only way to have a human review it is to say you have been hacked. Wow. Hopefully that never happens. Um, and Danny's saying, all caps, yet, and he was perfectly healthy before that. Talking, getting back to Hank Aaron. Hank Aaron had a very active schedule. He was around 86 or 87 years of age, but he was Hall of Fame baseball player, former home run king. If Barry Bonds hadn't used steroids, he might still be the home run king. And very active. And then within a couple weeks or 17 days, 12 days, I just I just reviewed it. I think it was 12 days after his dose, he passed away suddenly in his sleep, and no autopsy done. Very convenient. No autopsy done. So is RFK wrong in saying that if RFK Jr. has said that Hank Aaron died of the COVID vaccine, uh, I do think that is wrong, but it's not. But I think if RFK Jr. says that Hank Aaron may have died, that it's a possibility that his death was linked to the COVID vaccine. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Uh, because no autopsy was done to establish a link. It's the old line, I say it all the time. Absence of evidence doesn't mean absence of evidence. What did the autopsy results show? Can you show me well, we didn't do one. Oh, so any evidence that could have shown it, if there was evidence of the COVID vaccine killing Hank Aaron, it's been destroyed because no autopsy was done. If you cremate the body, well, you can't do an autopsy. And Danny would put his money on it. Um, and then Danny is writing that he has a buddy who was shot and killed in a drive-by. Um, and I won't give the gory details, But Danny is saying that that individual had his death listed as COVID. As I understand it, the World Health Organization, under the guise of for tracking purposes, in order to properly track the spread of COVID 19, to in order to understand fully the spread of SARS-CoV-2, anyone who dies with a positive test is to be counted in with the COVID death totals, even if their cause of death was not COVID. I read that in an ABC News article when it was revealed that there was a coroner in the state of Colorado in a rural area who she was concerned that in her small area, that even just 2 deaths being listed at COVID, it kind of blew the numbers up on a per capita basis. And she said that a murder suicide, gunshot wounds, a man and a woman had died of gunshot wounds, murder suicide. However, she was forced to include those 2 deaths, and they were included with the COVID death totals. And that was as per US health officials' regulations, which were following World Health Organization guidance. World Health Organization mandated that if anyone dies with a positive COVID test, even if they're killed in a motorcycle accident. That happened in Tallahassee, Florida. A young man died in a motorcycle accident, COVID death. A guy in California died of a fentanyl overdose, COVID death. And why? But the COVID didn't kill them. Yeah, but they had a positive test. And we need to track the pervade, rather convenient. And it helped to cement the other branding statement that was everywhere from the start of the pandemic, or what they called the pandemic, and they said the deadly coronavirus, the deadly coronavirus, the dead. We're doing everything we can to protect the people of Ontario, of California, of the United States, of Canada, of Great Britain. We're doing everything we can to protect the population from the deadly coronavirus. And look at how, and then they would quote that how many people were in the COVID death total column. There 10,000 people have died, are listed as having died. That's the COVID death total number. Yeah, but it includes fentanyl overdoses, murder suicides. It includes, you're not putting down the actual cause of death. It's just simply with a test. But it's easier to understand. Nuance gets lost. And when you drive fear, people can't think. People are just scared of the deadly coronavirus. And so when you try to inject some nuance and say to them, yeah, but yes, 10,000 is the global number. That's everyone who died with a positive test. But that doesn't mean it was their actual cause of death. Here, I'll show you on Twitter, on their official Toronto Public Health, their official Twitter handle. They say that not everyone who's included in the COVID death totals necessarily died of COVID. Say, no, it's too difficult. That requires thinking. I don't think anymore. I don't even know my own phone number. It's stored in my phone. I don't know anything anymore. I've put everything in my handheld device. I don't know how to think. That's the world we're confronting today. Uh, and Danny's father sounds like Justin Bieber. There have been a few cases of this Bell's palsy, which is facial paralysis. You see that there have been a number of famous people who, after COVID vaccination, developed Bell's palsy, and non-famous people too. Guillain-Barré syndrome is another, which is paralysis. And now the difficulty is there's this idea of what's referred to as plausible deniability. And the simple fact of the matter is that before the COVID vaccines came out, did people get Bell's palsy? Did it happen? Yes. Guillain-Barré syndrome, this paralysis? Yes, it happened occasionally. Did people have heart attacks? Did children have heart attacks before the COVID vaccines? Yes, they did. Very rare, but it did happen. And so you have this idea of plausible deniability. And then when you have individuals like a Hank Aaron, prominent, home run king, Hall of Fame baseball player, dies, and they don't even do an autopsy. And it's crazy, this world that we're living in. Uh, Danny says he had a boss who died 24 hours. Um, and Nancy's writing that things started to change in the US when a motorcycle cause of death was deemed to be COVID when he was unalive because of the road. That was in Tallahassee. If I'm not mistaken, we're likely referencing the same event, Tallahassee, Florida. But most people don't know about that, even though it was reported in the mainstream legacy media. The murder suicide that I read about in an ABC news article. I read in another mainstream, it was NBC, ABC, or CBS, a Minnesota state legislator talking about the fact that the medical authorities, hospitals, and such were incentivized to diagnose patients with COVID. I forget the exact dollar figures now, it was too long ago, but every time they diagnosed an individual with COVID, I think it was in the neighborhood of $10,000 from Medicare, Medicaid, from the federal health authority, whether it's Medicare or Medicaid, I forget which. I don't know the American system that well, but every time they diagnose someone with COVID, and when you have a PCR test with an amplification cycle that can be ramped up north of 40, that will trigger positives in healthy people, even then there's an incentive there. Fraud in the US hospital system was already rampant. Look into the billions of dollars of fraud that are have been proven fraud in the healthcare industry in the United States, because they'll take a bunch of people in a long-term care home, nursing home, hospice, and they'll put them into a room and have them watch an episode of Barney, the purple dinosaur, and then they'll bill Medicaid for cognitive therapy. This kind of thing has gone on rampantly. Oh, but they wouldn't do it, well, that's different. They wouldn't do it over COVID. Of course they would. Fraud is fraud. Um, Danny's writing that the COVID vaccine came out in 2020 at some point. Yeah, and right around December 1. December 2020 was when the US gave it what is referred to as an emergency use authorization. Normally, we wouldn't authorize this, but there's nothing else that works. Nothing else there's nothing else available. And so even though this hasn't been fully tested, even though we have no long-term safety profile on it, even though we moved at fictional warp speed to get it into people, to get it out, we're going to authorize it anyway. And in Canada, they called it an interim use authorization, meaning though that even though it's not authorized yet, in the interim, we're going to allow people to get it. And then later, full authorization was given. Um, Danny's saying that I have a picture of a COVID vaccine box with an expiry date in early 2019. Yeah, but pictures, you got to be careful. AI is so pervasive, deep fakes are so pervasive. You have to be skeptical. I mean, that's something that someone who is pushing back on COVID will love. It caters to the bias. Someone shows you a picture and says, "Look, here's a COVID-19 vaccine box. Look, it says expiry 2019." Then, and using this as proof that, yeah, you got to be careful with that, because it wouldn't be too Photoshop, whatever, to, change a 2021, 2022. How hard would it be to change it to 2019 if you're talking about a picture? Uh, anyway, and I got what you said, Danny. Riddle me that. Yeah, I mean, we see this all the time in today's world. Videos and images are used as proof, and yet we live in a world where doctoring videos and images is so incredibly easy. and it's done. It's done. I saw a whale jump up on the deck of a cruise ship, well, crashed into the railing of a cruise ship and sent tons of people. I saw it, but we all know it's AI. Um, yeah, and Danny then goes, what so many people said, the virus is so deadly that you have to get tested in order to find out that you've got it. Yeah. I don't have any symptoms. Oh, that's one of the symptoms. That was one of my favorite memes that was floating around. And no, I never switched it to live chat. Hope I didn't miss any. Um, and Nancy saying, probably not. No, I didn't. But I think I got pretty much all of them. I don't think there's a lot more. I had one other thought that I wanted to talk about and see what you guys think about this. You're probably all familiar with Mandela. What do they call it? Mandela syndrome or the Mandela effect? I think it's called the Mandela effect. And the most pervasive or the most common example I've heard of the Mandela effect is that the most common element of it, the most common example is the Bernstein Bears, so the Bernstein Bears. I, growing up, I always thought it was the Burst. I forget what I thought, but the name is longer than what I thought it was. I thought it was the Bernstein Bears. That's what I thought, but it's actually the Bernstein Bears or something longer than that. And another common example used is the logo for Fruit of the Loom, for Fruit of the Loom underwear and their little cornucopia of fruits. And there are suggestions there. Danny's written it down for me. Bernstein is how he's written it. Um, and then Whale, with respect to the photo, talking about Danny finding a photo of a COVID vaccine box, expiry 2019. Dan Whale is saying that there are software means such as photo forensics that will interpret real photos from doctored fakes. Um, and that we see them often in celestial imagery. Um, and then Nancy is saying, I swear I saw the cornucopia in the in the logo for the Fruit of the Loom. So did I. And it strikes me, I had a thought with respect to this Mandela effect. And it's this: I don't think the Mandela effect is real. I think the purpose behind the Mandela effect is to have people question their actual memory, to have people question their actual memory so that they will rely on the authoritative, all knowing, all seeing, all wise government and tech agencies and media. And I'm tying it in to the novel 1984 and the character of Winston. Winston, many will remember, worked at the Ministry of Truth. That was his job. And his job was when the narrative changed, and it's a little unwieldy. Winston lived in Oceania, and Oceania was always at war with Eurasia, always, had always been. They've always been an enemy with Eurasia, and they were allied with East Asia, but then it changed. Then they became allies with East Asia. Sorry, then they went to war with East Asia, and they were friends with Eurasia. And it was Winston's job to put down, to take all the information, all the news, all the documentation, everything that said that Oceania had been at war with Eurasia, was put down the memory hole. And now we've always been allied with Eurasia. We've never been at war with them. And people kind of go, wait a minute, I remember when we were they were our allies, but now I'm being told they were always our enemy. Or you get where I'm getting at. I hate the fact that in the novel 1984, the world was divided into three main principalities. One was Oceania, which was I take that to be the Western world, Oceania. Then there was Eurasia and East Asia. You couldn't change the language a little, George, and make it a little more differentiated between East Asia, Eurasia. It's like Lord of the Rings and Sauron and Sauron and Saruman, Saruman and Sauron, the two evil guys. But Saruman was the White Wizard, and Sauron was the Great Eye. Well, you couldn't change it a little, Jr., and make it a little more. Anyway, I think what they want to do, I think the purpose behind the Mandela effect is to have people question their own memory so that whatever they want to say, well, we never mandated, we never forced people to take the COVID vaccine. And I've heard them say that. We've never forced people. What? Yeah, you did. If you don't get the jab, you're out of the army. You're out of your job. That is force of the worst kind. You want to put food on the table, you want to put clothes on your kids' back, you want to pay the rent, the mortgage. Yeah, we're forcing you to get it then. That is force. But now they say, well, we never forced anyone. And the illegal coercive force that they used goes down the Orwellian memory hole. And because they promoted this idea of the Mandela effect, where, well, you can't rely on your own memory. You can't rely on your own memory. There's not an alternative universe out there. That's the kind of the conspiratorial side of the Mandela effect. It's sometimes punted that it suggests the existence of the multiverse, a parallel universe that we're flipping back and forth between, but I don't buy into that either. And then there's another one, and well, and Danny's saying that someone, in terms of the Fruit of the Loom stuff, that there have been people who have pulled out T-shirts, underwear, whatever, with the cornucopia, and some without. And I'm suggesting that this is just a way that they've created the World Economic Forum types are creating this instability. Nancy is saying, gaslighting. I think it's somewhat akin to gaslighting, not so much trying to make people feel crazy, but like it because they want people to feel like, well, I can't trust my own memory. I'm going to defer to the authority figures. If they say the COVID vaccines were never forced on people, well, then my memory ain't the best. I can't remember. So it's akin to gaslighting. And then Danny's writing another. This is another common example. Luke, I am your father. I'm saying it like Arnold instead of James Earl Jones. Luke, I'm your father. From Star Wars, they're trying to tell us it's I am your father. Yeah, I haven't fully delve into that one, but I know that one I've seen that Luke, I'm your father. Luke, I am your father. I'll check it out. I'm kind of curious now. Whale is writing that I agree. When I blew off Mandela effect, it was about the Ford logo F, cross loop, and others. Well, I used to own a Ford. And as I know, it's the cursive, standard cursive F, letter F. Have they changed that one too now? Whatever. Um, and then Danny's writing, I've seen both Ford logos this week. I should have taken pictures. Next time I will. Uh, And then Danny saying that this is why he recorded a lot of stuff during COVID, so that he has the quote unquote receipts for when they say we never said that. I can pull out the video and prove that they did. Like, what's her name? Rachel Maddow, Mad Cow Maddow, whatever her name is. on MSNBC. I've got the video of her going, the virus stops. With each vaccinated person, the virus stops. You cannot get infected. It cannot use you to jump to another person. The virus stops with this is the end. And we get everyone vaccinated, and she was spreading, obviously, medical misinformation. But that's what she was being paid to do. And how much advertising revenue does MSNBC get from the Pfizers and the pharmaceutical companies of the world? So you talk about conflict of interest when 12 former commissioners with the FDA take on or criticize the FDA's new stance on how they're going to be regulating the pharmaceutical industry. Would it not, when these former commissioners are writing this piece that gets published to the New England Journal of Medicine, should they not be required to say that, this guy sits on the board of Pfizer, this guy does consulting work for Merck, for GSK, and for Moderna, and all these, and this one works for this pharmaceutical, this one sits on the board of that pharmaceutical. These are conflicts of interest that I did not find disclosed in the New England Journal of Medicine article. Is that ethical? To have what could be perceived, certainly, as a conflict of interest, and to not disclose it. If someone criticizing the manner in which the FDA is going to be scrutinizing the pharmaceutical industry, if someone's going to criticize that and is sitting on the board of Pfizer, should they not disclose that, while I'm writing in defense of, the former way of, the relationship between the FDA and the pharmaceutical industry, it should be noted that I am on the board of directors for that pharmaceutical company. It's grotesque what is going on. And Wales writing, you have to undergo a medical intervention to be a slave. Danny's writing, I think it's more something. I can't read that. More LI. I think it's more. They want us to question our sanity. That's a form of gaslighting, but it's also a manner in which they can get us to, well, I thought I remembered this, but well, Mandela effect. I guess it's a false memory. And okay. And then Danny's writing that he has a video from 2017 on his birthday of Fauci saying, in this presidency, there will be a pandemic. We're going to get hit with the pandemic. I've seen similar videos, although I didn't watch it. Darnell Pistachio from all the way out in Edmonton has shown up. You're here late, but that's fine. Enjoy everyone who comes on the stream. And it's getting late, so I'm going to wrap up pretty soon. I almost didn't do the live stream tonight, and I'm trying to get into the habit. I want to do them Wednesdays and Sundays regardless. Any other, when I have things to say any other day of the week, I'll go live as well or upload a video. But I want Wednesdays and Sundays. I want people to know that, okay, Wednesday, Sunday night, 10 o'clock or so, Gordy Canuck, Act 1 might be on, or it will be on. And that's challenging. Because I do lead a busy life. I'm working, puppy. I have a 12-year-old in the house, so life can get challenging. And it makes it hard to grow the channel because I think it's nice for people to know. They want to know that, okay, Wednesday he's got a show, Sunday he has a show. And then if I don't do it, it doesn't help me. It doesn't help build the channel. Anyway, and Danny, his messages are cutting off. I have a friend who works in a funeral home, and he says the staff there have been pulling out people he has never seen. Well, yeah, I think you're talking about the white fibrous, I think they're called clots or whatever. And Darnell saying hi to everyone. And then Nancy is writing, hell, even Aruda, the health chief during the COVID was caught saying and recording saying that the jab was already available in 2019. Well, listen, and this is an area where any little slip of the tongue, often myself, I've meant to say the year 2002, but I say 2020, or I mean to say 2020 and I say 2002. I've done it a lot. And it happens, especially for me, it happens with numbers like, 2020, or what's that, 2002, 2002, 2020, and so I think to some degree, we all have our biases. And I think most on my channel have the same biases that I have with respect, certainly with all things COVID. But at the same time, I recognize that you have the compliant sheep who will go along with everything. And you've really got to check your receipts, I think, when you're going to talk to others outside of the bubble, outside of the echo chamber, and make sure that you've got the receipts and that it's nothing that can be easily explained away by, well, you made a slip of the tongue. You've never made a mistake, is what someone might say to me. And if I'm being fair, I'd have to go, yeah, I have. I've slipped up. Uh, there was one, Trudeau did a famous one where he talked about the next strains into or the next variant in development or being created. He did a slip and then he quickly corrected himself on it. You know, he said it. He started to say it as if the variants were planned and that they were in the pipeline, and then he quickly changed the way he worded it. And a guy like Trudeau will say, "Well, I was thinking in French and I used the wrong verb," and da da da, and he'll make an excuse. Um, anyway, Danny's writing that when he asked the families if the person had the jab, all the ones that he pulled, oh, this is funeral director, or whatever. Uh, okay, you can read that. I'll leave that people to read that on their own if they want. What Danny's writing about a funeral director asking the families whether or not the deceased had the jab, and then the protocols around whether they got it or not. Uh, and then Wales writing, when you have a bad case of COVID, you're allowed to keep the schedule on time. Uh, at any rate, I'm going to wrap up. There are other things happening in the news. I'm curious to see what's going to happen in the United States with Trump and with Venezuela. Is he going to put boots on the ground? My suspicion is yes. I think this is part of a broader agenda. I think we're going to see conflict. We've now had China and Japan and Australia had tensions. Apparently, a Chinese aircraft carrier um, locked their radar onto Japanese and maybe Australian as well fighter aircraft. The Chinese were operating, doing something of a military exercise, I think in the South China Sea, in that region of the world where both Japan and Australia are. They're operating in that same sector, for lack of a better word. And so the Japanese, the Australians wanted to observe it. They scrambled jets to observe. And then the Chinese reportedly locked their radar on them, suggesting that, it could be seen as having the potential for a hostile act. And things are tense in the world. Obviously, the Middle East, Iran, Syria, Israel, Gaza, anything could. Africa is incredibly tense right now. Nigeria, Democratic Republic of Congo. Now we've got another potential theater war. And of course, we're constantly stories. We almost don't look at them anymore about, drone attacks by the Russians on Ukraine or by the Ukrainians on Russia. And things are teetering. Um, and then Danny's writing that Aruda is lying something, sack of something. I'll leave it. And then Nancy's writing that Aruda was weird. One day during the noon health conference he had a picture in a frame on his desk, where you could see him hands in head in the old wood structure you could see in town square. Uh, Now, who is Arruda? Was he the chief medical officer of health in Quebec? Um, that's what I'm remembering, but is it? I don't want to add fuel to the fire on the Mandela effect, but I know that sometimes there are things I remember. There are things, not so great. Um, and then Danny's writing about big problems in Minnesota with the Somalis, with the fraud going on down there. Uh, oh yeah, there's a lot always going on in the world. But Danny put up the message earlier, and I let it be for the moment. But Danny wrote a while ago, Jesus is King. Jesus is Lord and King. And on a Sunday, we're coming to the end of Sunday, the 7th of December. That is something that you can't, this world needs Christ. And I'm no Pollyanna. I don't think, I do not believe we're going to see the ship turn around. It's just a question of who's going to go over the falls with the good ship of state that we're sailing on now, and who is going to get into relationship with Christ, and who is going to go home when life on this mortal plane comes to an end. And I pray that anyone watching this, that if you're not already in relationship with Christ, or if you are, you just begin to walk with him, walk closely, get as close to him as you can. And the way to do that is by getting into this book, because in Matthew 24, Jesus talks about this is but the birth pangs. You just had a massive earthquake on the British Columbia, Yukon, not the British Columbia, but rather the Yukon Alaska border. If I'm not mistaken, it measured 7.0. No damage or anything because it happened in an incredibly remote, the epicenter, 5 kilometers or so underground. So it was fairly shallow, but the epicenter was in the middle of nowhere. Hundreds of miles away, hundreds of kilometers away, it was felt. There was rattling and all the rest, but the distance was so far away from the epicenter where the actual earthquake, that basically the wilderness. So nothing was done. Uh, So, we have these birth pangs, wars and rumors of wars. We got rumors of war. Well, we've got the war between Russia and Ukraine that could expand. The Middle East is always a powder keg. Africa is always a powder keg. Now we have the Caribbean. We have Venezuela, neighboring Colombia, Trinidad, Tobago, Guyana. Everyone's on edge down in that particular region of the world. Is the U.S. going to be putting boots on the ground in Venezuela? The drug trade is very likely. You can be almost guaranteed that there are that there are compromised government officials, and some of them may be very senior, and not just in Venezuela, but in other countries as well, including my native Canada, the United States. Money talks, and use the metaphor of an earthquake, and things are shaking, and they're going to continue to shake, and Jesus in Matthew 24 talked about this is but the birth pangs, and anyone who's been pregnant, or any man who's been around a pregnant woman, if you've been married and have had kids, you know that the contractions get closer and closer and closer. And recognize the signs of the times that we're living in, and look to get into relationship with the author of all things, the way, the truth, and the life. And the best, the two best ways to do that, in my estimation, are number one, get into God's holy word, read the Gospels, but you need to read more than that. You read all of Genesis, read the whole Bible, and then get into community, get into relationship, get away from the screen. Don't don't use this as a substitute for live personal interaction. Get out in a faith community. Find a good, faithful church, a church that reads from God's holy word, and get into community, get into relationship. Don't rely on this world, because in this world, they can hit you with things like the Mandela effect and just send things down the Orwellian memory hole and gaslight you into thinking you must be crazy. I thought I remembered, but I was wrong, because you know, there's no more evidence. How many times have you seen something, gone to look for it online, and found it's impossible to find? I was looking, I know I read the studies about it was called antibody dependency enhancement, ADE. I was talking about it on yesterday's video. ADE, about experiments that were conducted, clinical trials on the animal stage, for mRNA, messenger RNA products that they'd been working on for 20 years. And some of those animal studies involved ferrets. And I read about one where the ferrets died, and the reason given was ADE, antibody dependency enhancement. And my non-expert understanding of what ADE is that when you take something like a vaccine, that it generates antibodies. These are vaccine-induced antibodies, and that there's those antibodies, but then there are the antibodies that your body would produce naturally on its own when it comes into contact with a viral pathogen. So you have the vaccine-induced antibodies and your own natural antibodies. And my understanding of ADE is that you become dependent on the antibodies that are generated by um, an agent like a vaccine, and it diminishes the ability of your own innate immune system to produce antibodies. And that's my non expert understanding, but I can't find the articles anymore. And I probably had them saved on my old laptop, but it crashed out. And Danny's writing it again with all the laughing emojis. The end is nigh. Yeah, the world will end soon. It could be a very long time. I might, go to my reward before it even happens. I probably will. But Danny reiterates the message: Jesus is Lord and King. Uh, and then Danny's writing, quick, Frank, the good ship Lollipop is about to leave. If you know, you know. Quick, Frank. Oh, that's from MASH. And Quick, Frank, the good ship Lollipop is leaving. And I forget what he was saying, what precipitated or Hawkeye to make that remark, or BJ. One of them made it, but I think it was probably Hawkeye. Um, and Denny saying that the quake was 10 kilometers deep, and it was felt as far away as Anchorage, and it was also felt in Dawson City, Yukon. So hundreds of kilometers away, it was felt. And I saw a video of a house shaking. Anyway, uh, and then Nancy saying Russia and Alaska. I didn't know that Russia had a quake, so I got to look into that one. Um, and Danny's saying, don't never forget about the Middle East crap show. The Middle East is always a powder keg, and it's like it's always sitting on an edge. It could be Lebanon, it could be Syria, it could be Yemen, it could be Somalia. Well, Somalia isn't really uh, Middle East, but it's close. It's and we're talking East Africa. So, anyway, uh, Wales saying that regarding ADE, and that's antibody dependent enhancement. As I recall, in 2020, Luc Montagnier said, "Prepare the body bags." Was that Luc Montagnier? Famous Nobel Prize winning French virologist was named Luc Montagnier. Uh, And then Danny's writing that antibody dependent enhancement is a virus mechanism in immunity. Uh, and Whale is saying that ADE was in relation to farm animals that boosted their health for a short lifespan. Candle burns brightest before it goes out, give you this boost. All of a sudden, you're very healthy, but then I think that's what he's writing. Uh, I think you meant Luc Montagnier. It's actually not Montagnier. I know that Luc Montagnier, Nobel Prize winner in virology. He got the Nobel Prize because his team, he led a team in France that is said to have isolated HIV, human immunodeficiency virus, the virus which causes AIDS. And it was for that discovery that his lab was awarded he was awarded the Nobel Prize. And then early in 2020, he was maligned and slandered and censored because he dared to contradict St. Anthony Fauci's proclamation that SARS-CoV-2 came from a lab, or sorry, came from a bat. Luc Montagnier, in examining, the virus himself, he said it had all the markings, it had all the telltale signs of something that had been created in a lab. That's this virus. He was of the opinion it could not have been created naturally, that it showed signs of human manipulation. Sometimes it's called um, directed evolution, and the other time it's called there was a word, and it's supposed to be banned. They were supposed to have banned um, it's a type of engineering, and I can't remember what it was called. Directed evolution is kind of the same idea. Um, I can't remember the words. Um, Gain of function. Thank you. I knew someone would help me. Uh, and Nancy's saying that the Russian earthquake, that it was in August, but it was a big one and it triggered tsunami alerts. Um, yeah, gain of function research. That was his opinion. It wasn't just him. Dr. James Redfield, who was the director at the CDC, and again, another uh, virologist, studies viruses. That's his bailiwick, same as Luc Montagnier. And Dr. James Redfield also said this has all the markings of something that was created in a lab through gain of function directed evolution. And Anthony Fauci had Dr. James Redfield shut out. And Dr. James Redfield addressed Senate subcommittee or committee hearings on what happened. And he talked about being basically shut out of the conversation because he wasn't singing from the songbook that Anthony Fauci wanted. One message. Anthony Fauci understood that we need to market this. We need a one clear, concise message. We all need to be saying the same thing. Anyone who doesn't go fit into this narrow paradigm, they're going to be shut out. They're going to be maligned. They're going to be censored. They're going to be trashed. It was so anti-science. It was ridiculous. Science requires questioning. Politics is all, and marketing is about messaging and propaganda and all that. And COVID was 99% marketing and propaganda, 1% science. Anyway, uh, yeah, and Danny's writing there is an African country that had a papaya fruit that test. I saw people I know took the rapid test and would pour Coke on it and sometimes get positive, or tap water or orange juice, all kinds of things would test positive. Uh, anyway, I've been rambling on. Well, Nancy, Danny, um, we also had Darnell Pistachio, who I mistakenly, because Darnell and Danny are so close, I sometimes mix the two names, but I'm rambling. It's late. It's coming up on midnight now. Will soon be December 8th. So as I like to end my videos, and if I don't, Danny will give me grief. If I do it too quick, he'll miss it. But may the Lord bless and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you. And may the Lord God Almighty, creator of all things, may he grant you peace. And in this crazy world, Why would you say no? Why would you say no to peace, love, comfort, joy, bliss, and an eternal resting place where we're all going to be free of this world eventually. So God bless, and we'll see you when I do my next live. Take care. Night.